Alright, so after my first two reviews have been spoiler free, this episode I'll be going into spoilers later on in the video. There will be a warning. So let's get on with looking into Star Trek Discovery Season 2 Episode 3 Point of Light. Now this episode did feel very hectic. There were a lot of plot threads being strung along, as well as two new ones being introduced, so I count at least 4 main plots at the moment, and a whole host of subplots, and I'm wondering, can Discovery juggle this many narratives without making a mess? There's the Red Angel primary plot with Burnham Spock subplots, the Klingon arc involving not only the internal struggle of the Empire, but also the Ash-Vok dichotomy. Georgiou has returned, bringing with her a whole new dynamic in Section 31, and the Spore Drive storyline with Tilly's visions, Stamets, direction in life, and those are just ones present after 3 episodes. This was the first story that I had to watch twice to pick up on everything. Right now, Episode 3 subsisted of much setup for the future of the series, and as speculated, the return of the Klingons brought with it a darker tone. I will say that I'm curious to see where the writers are taking the Klingon narrative, as at the moment it seems a little pointless. Just a continuation of characters from Series 1. Tyler's story seems relevant potentially, but maybe it's way too early to say after only 1 episode. But it's a question I feel compelled to ask due to the crammed feeling of this 48-minute run. We get to see Klingons with hair, something I've been whining about since they were first introduced, and I'm not sorry for it. I think that if this was how they appeared from the get-go, it would have done much to curb the notions that they look more like orcs. Now they look more like, well, funny-looking Klingons. But I digress. They even come up with a backstory for the origin of the D7 battlecruiser, the warship of choice for the Empire. The symbolism behind it is a notion I can get behind, and it's all about unification, but in Klingon fashion, it's through construction of a new battle fleet. L'Rell and Vok Tyler face a great deal of resistance from the houses of the Empire, especially around the House of Kor, who is now led by the Series 1 Kor's father. Naturally, as Kor was the leader for much of the Klingons' campaign against Starfleet, he feels somewhat spited by L'Rell's notions of sweeping changes to the structures of the houses. However, it seems it's all dealt with by the end of the episode, and this is one story arc that I wouldn't have minded they spend some more time on. Again, raising the question, where are they taking the Klingon narrative? Or is this it? But there is some lingering setup that suggests otherwise. We also learn more about Spock's predicament, and it's a mixed bag that requires some further digging. But again, we still haven't encountered him, so alright, I'll bite. I want to know what the hell's going on. Burnham gets to share the spotlight with Amanda, Spock's mother, who does a good job of playing a worried mother, using what influence she has to pry what little information on Spock she can from a tight-lipped Starfleet medical. After all, Spock wanted his situation to remain quiet. And finally, Tilly's comedy here takes a back seat to some more dire circumstances, as she's understandably freaking out about seeing her old childhood friend. Her panic is palpable, and the scene where she voices her concerns to Burnham serves not only to make me empathise with her, but go a long way to humanising Michael, who, in her own stoic Vulcan-raised matter, tries to provide solutions rather than just a shoulder to cry on. So we're moving into spoiler territory now, but suffice to say this episode took a bit of a dip in the season for me, not really because of any real lack of quality, but because there was too much being forced into a single episode, turning major plot points and setup into single blink or you'll miss it scenes. Exacerbated all the more by camera work that literally starts upside down, sideways, and in a mystifying attempt to disorientate the viewer. Why? There's already so much going on as it is, I don't need to be trying to work out which way up is, or what the smeg I'm looking at. Alright then, still here? First off, what's up with the lighting in that first scene? Is that part of the training, or was it meant solely to represent Tilly's mindset? I couldn't tell. As I said, her scenes in this episode were very empathetic, and I'm glad she made the choices she did when she did, like a reasonable, sane person. Though I want to know how she had something that size inside her and never noticed, unless it expanded when it was removed. Also, the removal seemed a little hasty. Shouldn't Stamets have gone to get a medical professional? Still though, his solution of effectively just rip it out seemed very contrived and just for the sake of get it done, next scene. Right, so next up is Spock. I understand that this series seems to be attempting to deconstruct the character of Spock and looking at it through a human lens. He is, after all, half human, a stance many modern tellings of Spock like to remind us of. So when Amanda reflects the medical concerns that Spock may have grown up as a psychopath, it's based very much from a human point of view. A Vulcan could appear that way to a human, a fact McCoy would often point out in TOS. This, combined with his alleged acts of violence and murder, seems more like a cover-up for something else, and spoken to purely shock audiences into talking about Spock. Amanda, Burnham and Pike, all of whom know Spock, and therefore reflecting our opinions of him, are all incredulous of the idea he could be as unstable as the medical files are suggesting. But that could be one more thing Discovery is playing with, to mess with the audience's preconceptions. After all, this is a Spock 8 years before we see him in TOS, so perhaps they've overhauled him too. Gasp! I hope not, and that it's all smoke to get people speculating. Ashvok is in an interesting place. He seems able to Klingon with the Klingons, but is still reaching out to humans when he needs advice. The themes of finding a place to belong here are anything but subtle, and I'm curious to see if Section 31 brings him into the fold. It's a nice touch to see him argue that L'Rell needs to treat him like Vok, and that the other Klingons cannot see deeper than his form, so the problem lies with others. However, upon kissing him, he pulls away, saying that the human side of his trauma-filled psyche finds her actions repulsive, so it's quickly pointed out that his journey of belonging is going to be one of finding himself as much as dealing with others. Empress 31 goes on to point out that the Klingon people may have a hard time accepting L'Rell as the first female Chancellor, and that she may have to adapt her approach. The former Terran Empress's ruling advice is taken to heart by L'Rell, despite Mira Georgiou not being the best source of virtue and equality. Yeah, she said Klingon men have small minds, but she also ate a Kelpian, so she's pretty against anything that's not her. So when L'Rell declares herself not Chancellor, but Mother of the Klingon Empire, apart from Georgiou's advice, it could be allusions to the Klingons' original allegory for Russia during the Cold War era tensions. She's realised that perhaps she'll have a better time ruling over the houses if she admits that she's different from the norm, and the adoption of the Mother moniker goes some way to raising parallels with the motherland ideas. The government, the ideal that all of those who fight for her are her children. This is just speculation, but it was a notion that was suggested on discussion with others, so I have no idea if that was the intent or not. Pinning everything on Ash was a clever move, if a painful one, but it removes Tyler and her child as a weakness, and earns her more respect, as Klingon family ties matter a lot, so the loss of her heir would be seen as a great sacrifice. What's more, saying that Quacha died for her adds legitimacy to her claims, and invalidates his previous arguments. And, as a final Easter egg, they leave Vok and L'Rell's infant on Boreth, the same home of Klingon monks that awaits the return of Kahless, as frequented by Worf. The legend of Kahless said that before he vanished, he raised his hand to the night sky and gestured to a star that turned out to be Borath. Look for me there, on that point of light. That was a nice touch. So all in all, that's my review of episode 3, a strong opener for Discovery, but this episode revved things into overdrive a little suddenly for my tastes. I did enjoy seeing familiar elements creeping in, but the setup with the child seems like the only continuing plot point with the Klingons that I can see, but we'll have to wait. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I've been Rick, and Qapla'.